Off-Broadway. Ooh! Some of the most talented people you may never have heard of have been on it. But today, I have someone who knows everyone. Not only does he know everyone because he's worked on Broadway, he's worked for Disney, he's done the readings, the workshops, he's been on all of the shows, the Law and Orders, the Blue Bloods, the Perfect Murder. And when we're talking about Broadway, we're talking about First Wives Club, Evita, Addams Family, there's just so much. But he's got this podcast. It's amazing. It's called the Why I'll Never Make It podcast. Yes, you guessed it. It's Patrick Oliver Jones. He's on the podcast today. Yes. Who's excited? I'm excited. I can't fucking wait. I'm so stoked. I love him.
I sat down with Jeffrey to talk about his own history as an actor, the lucky breaks that have come his way as a...
You guys... Patrick's on the show today. He's on the show today. He's on the show today. We're going to talk about his extremely eccentric career that he has had in the arts, as well as diving into who he is as a person and how he got from point A to point B. I love him so much. His vocals are beautiful. I love the way that he sounds, and I cannot wait until I get to see him on stage again. So you're in for a treat today. Not only are we going to have one of the best podcasters that I know in the business, but we also dive in. We talk about fear, and we talk about longevity in this career. And I love him so absolutely and completely and beautifully. Is that a thing? It feels like it now. I love him. I love him. I love him. So let's go ahead and bring him out because he's fucking magical. But before we bring Patrick out, let's go ahead and talk about a great little excerpt from the magical book, You Are the Magic You Seek, 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 Seek. You are the best guide to your own life. So it's a guided journal. I really like it. I started doing it and I really like this page, so I wanted to read it to you. Okay, so small everyday practices to cultivate your patience. Patience, it's such an interesting word. And it's funny because I did a podcast over on Patrick's show and I talked about patience and how it's something that I struggle with. And then sometimes it's like my best virtue. So it's something that I'm constantly working on. It's a work in motion, which is why I felt it important to bring it up today. So when you are feeling impatient, remember that it's just a moment. And moments are fleeting. Envision your journey as a series of unique events strung together like garland or flowers, each one blooming, each one in its own time, blooming in its own time. Yeah. Check in with yourself regularly. Assess your current state of being and collect evidence. Look at old memories, photos, writings. Reflect on things that have happened, moments past. Remind yourself that what meant to be will come and that you are worth the wait. I really like this guided meditation book. Not guided meditation, guided journal. It's a journal for looking within. I really like it. I started using it and I find it interesting. So, yeah, right? What does all that mean? It means that you gotta give yourself some grace. Take a breath and look at where you've come from. Every person's story is so different, and I hope that you're seeing that from this podcast. Everyone. I mean, we have Carly Gibson that got scouted at a high school that she was at and like leaped to stardom in Hairspray. She was on the pod. We have Lisanne Valentine, who was an attorney at law, just like Claire Huxtable. And then now she's on all of these TV shows as an actress. Like, how does that happen? Everyone's journey is so vastly different. And it's the toughest thing in the world not to compare yourself to other people. And I know we see it and we say it. Don't compare yourself. Don't compare. It's fucking hard not to. It is hard. Especially when you're just trying to figure out, like, how do I get there? Like, what do I do? Well, they did this. I didn't do that. I can't. I. And we start to, like, analyze because we're just trying to figure it out. It's just a puzzle. We're trying to figure it out. But you can't figure your life out as a puzzle. Like, you can't magically come to it one day and think I'm going to put all these pieces together and it's going to be fine and it's going to set. No, things are going to move in the puzzle. Moments are going to go everywhere. Like, you're going to adapt, you're going to change. And so comparing yourself to someone else, and I'm saying this for myself as much as I'm saying it for you, comparing yourself to someone else is a losing battle. And I mean, I'm all for failing, but do you really want to keep failing at the same thing, which is that? Don't compare yourself to other people. When you find yourself starting to go in that mode of comparing other people's successes to your own, just remind yourself of you are who you are. You are who you were yesterday, and you're building. You're building your blocks into where you are going to go, and that takes patience. It takes you breathing when you're frustrated. It takes you working harder than everyone else. It takes you dedicating your time. It takes you devouring it and really savoring all of your moments. Because that's all we can do. All we can do is just savor life as much as we possibly can. It could be gone tomorrow. For all you know, you could be working all of your days. It's kind of like Drew Barrymore. I was listening to her audiobook, Wildflowers. And she and Cameron Diaz went on this skydiving thing. So they do this skydiving thing and they're going, and Cameron, like, you know, bullets down and goes super duper quick, and Drew's like, I don't know, and like she finally pulls her little strap and she's like, oh look, I'm good. And so the cape opens, or not cape, but the parachute opens, and then she skydives down and it's a beautiful view, and they're so happy, and it was like all of this excitement, and they're like, oh, we didn't die. And then they went to have some food. They went to get a bite, and Cameron's eating this burrito, and she takes a bite and it's glass. She had just gotten out of an airplane and jumped out of it and fell to the sky and was fine. Yet she went to go get a sandwich, a burrito, and then boom, she needed to get dental surgery. Life is Cameron Diaz's burrito. Life is unexpected, and all you can do is give yourself some patience. So as you're going through your day and you start to get frustrated with others or frustrated with yourself, take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. Recenter yourself. Take a lap if you need to. Take a lap. Go take a lap. Come back and get back in it. Because you, my friend, are incredible. You are magical, and there is something that you can offer to this world no one else can. You've got something inside you I don't have. I got my own shit going on. You've got something inside you that is truly incredible. And all you can do is keep showing up for yourself. And there are going to be tough days. There are going to be days you don't want to get out of bed. There are going to be days that are just really, really challenging, and you wish someone would just hold you and tell you everything's going to be okay, but sometimes no one's around. And that's what it is. You can try to pull out your little bag of tricks, the things that make you feel good. For me, I pull them all out. I pull them all out and I put them on top of me. And it helps. And it helps. So there's my little rant for right now. I'm so grateful that you're here. I loved talking to Patrick. I look up to him so much, not only as a brilliant actor, but as a terrific podcaster with such a strong voice and such an interesting individual. I just really am enamored by him. So I hope that you enjoy this episode, and let's go ahead and dive in. Let's check out Mr. Patrick Oliver Jones from the Why I'll Never Make It podcast, as well as Broadway and everywhere else that you can find people that are naturally just magically talented. Here we go. Here he is. Okay. He's done national tours. He's done Off-Broadway. He's done Disney. He's done some TV. He's done some audiobooks. He's done some podcasts. And by some, I mean 174. Like, it's so much I ran out of air trying to get it out. It's so much. And you've even managed to stay busy during the quarantine by doing like virtual theater online with like some really big names, and like just you're a big name and you're here. And I'm just like, what? Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring you to every audition, to every show, and I'm just going to have you stand out and just proclaim all these things.
Yeah.
I
You
love
could
it.
call me your mom.
Or just a very enthusiastic agent. How about that? I like that. Press rep. Ooh, press rep.
Press rep. That's real good. That's
Yeah,
real
I
good.
like that.
Patrick, I'm so excited that you were here on the show.
Well, I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Me too.
You're a hoot. And so I
You're
can't wait. I can't wait.
You're a hoot. It's funny because my first question that I always ask people is, go ahead and tell everybody how we know each other. And
so yeah, so you and I, we know each other roundabout ways. So you know my husband, Dylan.
I do.
Yes. And you and he have known each other a few years now.
Few years, yeah. We both did Actoria together.
Right.
And Dylan is a brilliant singer, such a wonderful singer, a terrific performer.
Yeah. And he's a pretty good person. I like to think.
And
so.
a good person. Yeah.
That too, whatever. But yeah, so you and I kind of know each other through him. And then recently we both did podcast movement, just trying to better ourselves in this new arena. Although I've been doing it for about 3 years now. You've been doing it for
about 3 months. 3 months.
Yeah. But you've been thinking about it for a long time.
But yeah, I've been thinking about it, but we all know thinking and doing are too fastly.
Yes, yes, very different. But yeah, so you and I kind of know each other in the podcasting world, and then you came on my show. So yeah, so now I'm reciprocating.
Yes, I love it.
And joining your audience.
I'm so happy that you're here. So, okay. F Your Fears podcast, we talk about your career, and I find that it's helpful for the audience because no two performers' careers are exactly the same. And so whenever you see the trajectory of someone else, I find for my own personal well-being, it's beneficial because it's inspirational of how'd they get there, what they do, what road did they take, and it's always different. And I love those stories. So I'm so happy that you're here to share your story with us. So I guess I'll just really start at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama.
That's right. I'm a good Southern boy.
Yeah.
Full of the Southern charm and the hospitality and all that. Yeah. You know.
Oh, I do know.
Yeah.
Lafayette, Louisiana. I hear you. So there you were. Little Patrick was a little boy over in Alabama. What were you getting into when you were a kid?
I would say that as a kid, I was always one to explore things, to figure out what's doing this and who's doing that. I always wanted to. I tended to be around, certainly kids in school, but I was around a lot of adults, and so I was always talking to my mom's friends. So I felt like I could, or at least in my mind, I could converse with anyone, adult or kid. But I was always just very curious. And probably the best example of this is that my mom worked in a hospital. And there was one time I think she worked in the lab, and I was in the kind of the waiting area, while she was getting done with work, and then we were about to go home. And I must have been very young. I had never seen one of those red boxes that's on the wall that says pull down. I was like, what is that? Like what happens if I pull down? I mean, I'm a little kid.
Yeah.
So I pulled down. Immediately the bell.
Yeah.
And at first I'm like, what's that? And then in my head I go, I think I did that. And then I just sat back down, and I just sat on the couch in the waiting room. I just looked down. I didn't look up. I was just going, and all these people were going back, and I just looked down. And then my mom comes out. She said, did you do that? And I just nodded my head. So that was me, just very curious and inquisitive. And if I see something, it's like, oh, what does this do?
Oh my God. So at what point did creativity become a big thing in your life? Like, at what point did the arts kind of start to grab you and hold you?
It really came about through going to church, and my mom joined the church choir, and around third grade I joined the
Mhm.
church choir for my age group. And so it really just kind of started then. I remember being in like first or second grade, and we had to like create these like little skits based upon a story we were hearing, either a history story or something. So I
Mhm.
mean, I remember kind of like dabbling and enjoying that and playing dress up. But the choir was really the first chance I had to like kind of understand what it mean to sing and sing with others, and then we would do little church musicals or this or that. So that was my first introduction to that. And in the fourth grade, that's when I got my first starring role as the shepherd boy. So of course,
Wow, that's a
I,
big
I'm
role.
well, I'm the one who announces Jesus is coming.
Yeah.
So I literally had to start in the back of the sanctuary, run down the aisle, get on stage, and like sing about Jesus. And I was completely out of breath because I had never practiced that hard of a
Oh
run
my
before,
God.
so it's stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's what really got me into it.
And so there you are growing up in Alabama, and you're singing in the church, and you're doing the school projects that pop up. At what point were you like, yeah, like this is what I want to do?
It probably wasn't until high school that I thought, oh, maybe I could like do this,
Hmm.
because I actually there was a Christmas radio play that happened, and they were like gathering actors, and it was my first time to do something outside of a school environment.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that started to make me think, oh, well, maybe I could like do this when I get to college. Maybe I could study it. I still wasn't really sure if it would be making a living or doing
Mhm.
that. So it was, I was still kind of on the fence, but I knew that it was something I enjoyed, something I wanted to continue doing, even in college, and in some form or another.
So then in high school, since you kind of thought, okay, maybe it could be a possibility, what did you think you would be when you grew up, when you were in high school? Like what did you have a thing that was at the front of your head?
Well, it was around, I think it was probably junior high that I started also being a part of the audiovisual department at the church.
Mm.
So I just loved being a part of audio and doing sound. And then there was some video stuff and just all the cool equipment that you got to press buttons on, so I loved
Mhm.
all that stuff, and learning the equipment. So broadcasting and that kind of thing was something that I really thought about, because I remember I asked the guy who was heading it up, what did you study in college? Where did you go? And he's like, mass communication. That's what I studied. So it was like in junior high that was planted. It's like mass communication. Maybe that's what I'll do. So
Yeah.
that is eventually what I got my degree in college.
Oh, that's amazing. So you get to college and
Mhm.
you get your degree in mass communications, but do you do any theater in college?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from the get go, I was first a music major.
Hmm.
Then that lasted a semester. Then I went to theater. That lasted a semester. Then I just
Okay.
went undecided. I was like, oh, okay, all right. And then that's when I finally went, mass communications, what I've been thinking. And it was in
Hmm.
broadcasting, which is kind of, I got to learn the behind the scenes of TV film production. So
Hmm.
I was like, one way or the other, this can be useful,
Hmm.
whether I'm in front of the camera or behind it. So that's what I landed on. And I started doing the college radio, which I loved, being behind the mic
Ah,
and
yeah.
spinning the tunes of smooth jazz.
Oh, that's great. Did you have like a name?
Oh, I was
Did
PJ the DJ. Of course I was.
PJ.
PJ the DJ. That's right.
PJ the
I am a
DJ.
sucker for anything that rhymes or alliteration. Yeah. So, yeah. And
That's a
if it's
good one.
punny, all the better.
Mm, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah. So that was my name on the radio. And yes, I was doing theater as well. Fortunately it was a small private college called Samford University in Birmingham,
Hmm.
which maybe you've heard of. Have you heard of that? Samford.
No, I haven't heard of Sanford.
They're known in Birmingham and certainly within Alabama as having a great music program, which
Oh,
is
that's
part of the
great.
reason why I chose them. And they gave me a scholarship, so it's like, well, thank you. So I'll
Yeah.
go since you're going to
Yeah.
give me a scholarship.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, thank you. So because it was small enough, I was able to, from freshman year, audition. And even though I wasn't a theater major at that time, I was able to audition and get in. Once Upon a Mattress was the first show that I did. Yeah, which was a lot of fun. Playing the
Oh,
minstrel.
oh, what a
Yes. Yeah.
good
Oh,
show.
it's such a good show. And we had such a great group of people that, for the next 4 years, we did a lot of things together. And so I ended up with a theater minor. So I
Mhm.
mean, I still put all my theater stuff to use as far as a minor.
What were some of the other shows you did in college?
It was a lot of unknown, and
Okay.
it's really the only time in my performing life that I got to do a lot of plays, because we did,
Ooh.
yeah, we did this one called Becoming Memories, which was kind of a tough show to do. I called it Becoming Migraines because it was such a
Mm.
hard show to do, and it just became a labor. Those shows that you go into and it's no longer fun or artistic, it's just a labor. And
Yeah.
so that it was one of those kind of shows. And
Yeah.
then the night Thoreau spent in jail, we
Mm.
did Six Characters in Search of an Author, JB. It's like all these kind of obscure 60s, 70s kind of plays that have these deep meanings and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So it was very heady kind of stuff. It
Mm.
wasn't until my senior year that they finally did something fluffy. I mean, Once Upon a Mattress is kind of fluffy,
Mhm.
but even they didn't do a lot of musicals. It wasn't until my senior year that the music department and theater department went, oh, we could do some co-productions.
Oh.
Yeah, they finally decided to start. So then they were doing like Kiss Me Kate. They did Into the Woods, which I wasn't able to do Into the Woods, but yeah, so they finally started to work together. But
Mhm.
by that point, my senior year, I was doing community theater, which is why
Mhm.
I couldn't do Into the Woods. So I started to
Okay.
branch out and do other things outside of college.
Okay. So when you were doing, well, I just have to say, you'd be so good as one of the princes singing Agony. And I mean,
It's like one of my dream roles.
yeah.
I've maybe passed my prime in that, but I think I could nail it. Yeah.
I don't think you're past your prime in that. I definitely think it's possible. So
Yeah.
there you were at community theater, and because spoiler alert, eventually moved to New York.
Yes. That's
So
coming.
did what was community theater kind of like a gateway to I want to I want to pursue this, or did that come later by the time you know?
Yeah, it was really in college that I think, especially once I nailed down the broadcasting degree,
Mhm.
that I saw it as, this is my backup degree. This is my kind of furthering, giving me some background knowledge, especially if I ever do TV film of
Mhm.
that world. But I'm going to pursue theater. And
Mhm.
so in summer, I did the summer stock, and then once community theater, I got to do, I got to finally do Man of La Mancha. I
Oh.
got to do what else? Look Homeward Angel, the
Ooh.
play,
Yeah.
and so I got to start doing other things that made me think, oh, okay, and I was paid for those
Mm.
jobs. I mean,
God, I love it.
my first job was 150 a week, so it wasn't much
But
at all.
still.
But you know what? I was being paid. I was
Yeah.
making money actually performing. It was the first time that I'd ever done that. So every summer I found work and was doing things. And then in between times, more once I got into junior and senior year, that I got to do stuff during the school year.
Mhm.
And it was funny. I actually did Hershey Park one summer.
Mhm.
And because of it, I showed up a week late to school. And right. So I showed up a week late and I missed the audition for Joseph. But because I had done Joseph the summer before at another theater, they just let me do it. So it was like,
Oh, that's
yeah. So
wonderful.
I really started to feel like, oh, I'm at home in theater. I can do this. And I, I, I didn't even have to audition for that one, so that was nice. And they're just,
Yeah.
so it's really made me start to have some confidence in my own ability to do this, and making me think, oh, I could continually find work and just, piece together a career out of this.
So you finished with college.
Hmm.
What are you thinking you're going to do next?
Well, fortunately, I went to SETC, the
Mhm.
Southeastern Theater Conference, and from there I booked. It turned out to be, how long was that? It was 7 months. So right out of college, in May, I think. In May of my graduating year, I started with a community theater it was a regional theater up in Tennessee.
Mhm.
And so for 7 months, uh, we did Camelot, Singing in the Rain, Tempest, and Oliver. So
Oh,
it was like
wow.
four shows. It's my one and only time to do Shakespeare. So so it gave me a good launching pad right out of college. Just
Yeah.
graduated, and I'm already working professionally. So yeah, I know, which
That
is
was amazing. That
yeah.
was amazing and so smart. And so smart to go, because what was it? What was, you said it was a convention?
Oh no, it was a regional theater called Cumberland County Playhouse.
Cumberland County. But before that, you said that you went to a
Oh yeah, the Southeastern Theater Conference.
how
Yeah,
smart. Very
yeah. And
smart.
so every spring they have the amateur version of it, for
Hmm.
college students and that kind of thing. And in the fall they do a professional one. And that year, when I was doing Cumberland County Playhouse, so I finally, because I was a professional now, I'm being
Hmm.
paid, I could go to the professional audition in the fall for SETC. And that's how I booked my next job, which was Disney World.
Okay. So let's like, it's a
Yeah.
small world after all.
Right.
Okay. So I'm a big fan of Disney. Not a lot of people are, but I am. I'm totally kidding. Like everyone loves Disney. Like it's Disney. It's a piece of our childhood. It's Disney. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What was that like stepping into that world?
Well, this was I love the beginning story because so let's see. Um I had finished Cumberland County Playhouse in like Novemberish, somewhere
Mhm.
in there. And so I just needed work for however long. And there were some friends of mine that worked at this kind of youth camp, and they did stuff throughout the winter, kind of preparing for the spring and summer months. So I was working in the office just doing envelopes, and I get this call from Disney on Christmas Eve. Yeah. And they're saying, and now I had auditioned in September,
Uh-huh.
heard nothing, 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 nothing. Christmas Eve, they call me and say, hey, we saw you at SETC. We would like to offer you the role of Victor the Gargoyle in Hunchback of Notre Dame at Disney World. And so, I'm just going, well, yes, more money than I'd ever seen, 600 a week, and my
Yeah.
equity card. So it's like, of
Hmm.
course I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
Now, a month prior to that, I had been offered again from that SETC. I'd been offered a job to work at this summer theater, doing like a Rodgers and Hammerstein review,
Ooh,
and I
fun.
had already said yes to that. And they had sent me the the contract, and I had signed it and was actually going to mail it that day. And then Disney called, and so I never mailed it. Obviously, I took Christmas break to think about it, and then I called them, the Rodgers and Hammerstein. I was like, I'm going to do Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So you get there. What was that first week like?
Well, everyone goes through what's called traditions.
Hmm.
It's basically their way of bringing you into the Disney family, and I think at the time it was 2 or 3 days of the history of Disney, of the culture, and their buzzword that whole time was synergy. you know, because Disney does movies, they do theme park, they do television, they do, you know, they got hands everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all about just talking about the company and how you fit into the company and how important you are. And that's really something that they're about, because I was in this traditions class with people who were going to be doing rides, who were going to be serving food, and so we were all mixed in together, and all of us were a part of the show, which is what they called it, and why we're all called cast members. So it really was a different way. I mean, I think I'd been to Disney World as a young child, so I didn't really have any specific memory of it. So it was really interesting to kind of get to know. I remember the first time when we took a tour, where we, you know, there was like, I don't know, 10 or 15 of us, and we would walk out into Magic Kingdom and just kind of walk around to the different parks. And so this is my first time to see it as an adult and kind of have those eyes. But then, of course, the big to do is, once you finish traditions, Mickey comes and thanks you for joining the company. So, I mean, how can you not? I mean, even I know, even as an adult, when Mickey walks into a room and is like shaking your hand, it's still a magical thing.
Yeah. Oh, Disney. you ruined my potential of ever having a normal functioning relationship because of all the narcissistic princes, but geez, I love you so much. I can't help it. Okay, so there you are. And how long were you at Disney for?
Well, I started in 97 and I was there full time until 2006.
Yeah.
So 9 years.
Wow. People love Disney.
Yeah. I mean, I my goal was to go there for a year, because it's a year-long contract, do Hunchback, get my equity card, go to New York. But life had other options.
Yeah.
You know, I got very comfortable there. I had my own apartment. I had my own car. I had, you know, my own furniture. You know, I had a life. And then I met who was going to be my wife, and was there for 4 years, married to her. So, I mean, it was just, it became a whole other life. And that dream of going to New York was kind of put aside. I thought, well, I can just make a living here. I'm performing. I'm getting paid. I'm with wonderful people. You know, I have a wife, I have a home. So it's like, okay, well, now this is my life. So that kind of became where I settled into for many of those years.
Okay. So at what point did you make some recasting decisions in your life and scene changes and
it was 2001 that my wife and I, we were both cast to go to Tokyo Disney Sea, which was just opening up in Tokyo. And, you know, because they had Tokyo Disneyland, but now they're adding the second park, Disney Sea. And I was cast in the encore show singing Broadway tunes, and she was cast in Sail Away, I think it was called, which was kind of this waterfront kind of old-timey show with dancing and singing, that kind of thing. So we both had two different shows, and it was a 9-month contract. So we were there, and it was through that experience and that kind of time when professionally things were going well, but personally not going well as far as our marriage. And so it was probably a couple of years after that, after the ups and downs of this and that we finally got divorced. And it was at that time that's when I really had to kind of sit back. I moved into my own place, you know, out of a 2-story home in a nice neighborhood back to my 1-bedroom apartment. And so really having to think about, okay, now what do I want to do with my life? Yeah. So this was around 2002, this was 2004 at this point. So I'm just trying to, now my wife and I, when we came back from Disney, we once again went into back to Disney World doing Beauty and the Beast. And so we were still both in that show through the separation and divorce. And so it was, you know, it was interesting. It was an interesting year
That's hard.
to be divorced.
You didn't perhaps play Beast and she played Belle.
No, but I was Gaston and she was a swooner.
Oh.
So there's that. Yeah. Yeah. So that was interesting.
That's a tough breakup.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
And there were, I don't need to get into all the nasty details, but there were other people that, that made it a little tense sometimes in the trailer, as we called it, because we were actually in a trailer behind the stage. So that lasted a year. I was finally moved over to another show called Hoop-de-Doo Review, which I absolutely loved. It's like a turn of the century pioneer show, 6 characters, 3 men, 3 women, and just a fun dinner show that lasts about an hour and a half. So, I mean, probably the funnest thing I did during my time at Disney. And so I was there full time. So at least I was away from the stage and was able to start to put some distance there. And so, so for the next year, 2 years, I'm just trying to figure out, well, okay, am I staying here? Am I doing this? I eventually get into another relationship but realized just that isn't going anywhere. And so because of that, I just need to leave Orlando. I need to cut ties with Disney, Orlando, put all this behind me. So I go to Vegas. I mean, from one extreme to the next, from Disney World, sunshine and wonderfulness to topless dancers and G-strings. Yeah.
What made you go to Vegas as opposed to New York? Because you had already had that idea of New York. It had kind of been in your head. What swayed you to Vegas?
Well, I had been in around 2005. I started making trips, every couple of months or so because of my schedule at Hoop-de-Doo. I was off for 3 days a week. So from time to time, I could just go up to New York and audition. So every now and then, I dipped my toe in that water just to kind of see what does a New York audition feel like. So I did have that in mind, but then auditions came for Vegas. It was to do a classic Vegas show called Jubilee. And I thought, well, this could be my chance to have work and get out of Orlando, which were 2 of my main goals. Yes, New York was a big goal, but just because I knew if I went to New York, it would be not having work and not having any sense of when the next job's going to come. But Vegas would be a chance to leave and have work. So that's really how that came. And I just kind of went on a lark, I wasn't really sure because they happened to come to Orlando and was holding auditions. I think, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 people showed up. So it wasn't a lot, but, but yeah. So I happened to get cast from that. And there's only, how many, there are 4, it's either 4 or 6. See, it's so far back, I can't remember, but there's only like 4 or 6 male singers and then the same female singers. So that they're not casting a lot, but I was still chosen. So I was like, well, sure. Yeah, let's do this. Now, once I got there, then I finally saw what the heck I had just signed up for. Yeah. And I was immediately going, oh my God, what have I done? Because it's 90 minutes it's really just a review show. Nothing relates to anything. It's song, go to new costume change, different place, another song. Like there's snippets of over 100 songs in the show. And it just goes from one to the, it's just spectacle. That's all it is. There's no art. There's no story. There's no character. So it was very different from any of the other stage work that I had done.
And so at what point are you like, hey, I'm done with Vegas. I'm going to go somewhere new?
Yeah. Their contracts are 6 months at a time.
Okay.
And so the 6 months came up. I was like, well, I don't really have any other prospects. So I decided to just do one more 6 month and just see how it goes, because at the time I had signed with an agent there. I was doing some modeling. I was doing some commercials. I was doing, so I was continuing a lot of the kind of side work that I was doing in Orlando, because Orlando, I also did commercials, but I was able to do it a bit more there because I had all my days free when it came to Vegas, because the show was just at night. so I decided to stick it out another 6 months. But after that, then I realized, okay, it is now time. I signed with an agent that was in Vegas and had an office in New York. So then I was like, okay, there we go. Now that I have this, now I can move and at least sign with an agent, because she was able to work out for me to meet with them, and they signed me whenever I moved to New York. So that, I think that was the biggest thing that led me to go, okay, now is the time.
So you get to New York.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was that like?
Well, fortunately, I'll kind of skip over the route that I went. I knew that I wanted to get to New York, but getting to New York meant having money. So for 6 months, right? So for 6 months before getting to New York, I went with a cruise ship. And so I told the agent in Vegas, okay, I want to get to New York, but I'm going to do this cruise ship, and then I would love to meet with the New York office. So she was like, great. So I did that, the cruise ship, banked a lot of money, and then after that cruise ship, packed up my wares in Orlando, put stuff in storage, and then headed to New York. And fortunately, I was able to room with someone that I'd met on the ship. So he needed a roommate, and so it worked out perfectly for that. And getting to New York, I was actually living in Jersey City outside of New York, but it was an hour 15 to get into the city just with trains and walking. And then on the weekends, it was like an hour and a half. So I was close to the city, quote unquote, but it was still a trek to get in there. And it was really just so different from any, certainly being in the South where everything is a drive away, and Vegas the same way. So to walk everywhere, the figuring out the subway. I mean, for the first few months, I was going in the wrong direction often, about like, wait, am I going this way? Am I on the right train at the right time? So it was just, the city life is itself something to get used to, much less auditions, being there at 6 o'clock in the morning, all the rigmarole of just trying to book an audition. The city living is really its own hurdle to come over.
And so once you got here in the city and you got into the biggest pond of them all, was there ever a time that you thought, maybe this wasn't the right idea in the beginning?
Yeah. In the beginning, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I knew it was going to be tough. And so, I got acclimated to kind of the wear and tear of that daily grind. But I would say within the first few years, I didn't think I'd made a mistake. I think that's because I was fortunate enough to start booking work. The first summer I was there, I booked a couple of things, regional. And so I started making money. So I was able to pay rent. I was able to feel like I was progressing, and my agent seemed to really like me. So I had a lot of good signs telling me, yes, you're in the right place. You're doing something. So it was a little easier to feel like I was in a home rather than feeling like I needed, I had made a mistake.
So at what point, like, what was the first thing that you got here in the city that you were like, this is my big break? Like, this is...
Well, the first thing, so this is the first summer that I got there, and Tale of Two Cities was auditioning. It was a Broadway show that lasted, I don't know, maybe like 3 months. So it didn't end up doing very well. But at the time, it was kind of going to be the next Les Mis. That's what it was being touted as. So I did the audition, and then I got a call back, and I was in the room with Warren Carlyle. So this is me 2 or 3 months moving to New York, and I'm in the room with Warren Carlyle, who wasn't quite the name that he was. I mean, he was still known, but he's obviously become a much bigger name now. But in that audition, I mean, the song was like in my voice. It was like, great, I got this. This is great. I know this. I was so I knew the song. The scene work, I thought I knew. And then when I get into the audition, he's giving me direction, or I'm trying to do this, and it didn't go as seamlessly as the song work. So I was like, I was visibly frustrated in the audition. I even said shit one time because I was just upset with myself. And Warren's like, it's okay. It's okay. Just take it again. So, I mean, I visibly showed my frustration in that
Yeah.
audition. Yeah. So it was, again, I didn't think I'd made a mistake. I just knew that, okay, I did not prepare as well as I thought. You know, the moment, you know, I'm auditioning for my first Broadway callback. And it was like a moment that I knew this, if this goes well, this is why I came here. So there was a lot riding on that audition of just self-imposed, this has to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
It's tough dealing with that, especially with how high the stakes are. You know, it's like
Mhm.
going into surgery for a callback. It's like, better go well or else I'm dead. No.
Right.
But it's definitely nerve-wracking. What tip could you give to people out there in terms of, not to sound so cheesy, but the actor prepares? Like, what do you do in order to get yourself in the right mindset to go into an important callback?
I know for the auditions when I've done the best, I felt the best, are the ones that I really connected with the character, which is something that you can't really always know about, but it does help whenever the character relates to you in some way. And so that means that you really have to pick roles. Now, when you're first starting out, I was just taking everything, but there were those times where I started to really pick the characters, the song choices, the type of stories that resonated with me. And so though that certainly helps to begin with, but that aside, it's knowing the material and really, you know, it is preparing it. I mean, it is knowing it. I rarely go into a room memorized. So it's not that. It's not that I know everything verbatim, but it is me knowing the arc of where I want to go. It knows, you know, just that mental image of, oh, I'm halfway down this page. I know that I'm going in this direction now. Oh, I'm about to say this line or tell this story. So it's knowing the ins and out and flow of the scene, so that when I get in the room and it's a reader I've never met before, I can play with them and take the scene where I want it to go, you know, make those choices. And in those instances where I've been able to play, and I've been able to go off the reader and then go off the director if he gives notes, those are the ones that feel the best to me, because I know the beginning, the middle, the end, and I have those markers.
I love that. That's really good advice. Now, there had to have been a couple of moments where you had some fear that kind of creeped in.
Yeah.
In those moments where you get scared, what do? Do you run? Do you freeze? What's your how do you combat fear?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, I'll kind of do it, you know, one answer personally, one answer professionally. As far as professionally, you know, in the moment of an audition, or especially if I have a script, then it's the script is almost like my only friend in there. The reader can be too. If they're a good reader, they can really be your friend. But if I have a script, then I hold on to that. I also, because I tend to want to rush, and then I just want to say my lines, and then I just want to, and so I have to, okay, slow down. If I need to hear what the reader said, look down. It's really about breathing through it, because you know, and which is what I didn't do in that Warren Carlyle audition. I was just trying to say the next line, get it out. I was trying to make that choice. Look, I can act, you know, rather than what am I trying to say? Here's that line. So it's about being deliberate and really taking your time with it. So for me, in an audition setting, that's how I can kind of confront that fear or nervousness. Personally, I don't go through it as well. I tend to, you know, kind of either stay in bed a lot, or I just watch TV, or I eat. I love to eat. Eating
Yeah.
is good, especially
Yeah.
good little yummy things.
Yeah.
So I tend to really self-medicate in those kind of ways when it comes to my own personal fear. And it can be a little harder for me to make, like it would be nice if the application of breathing, taking my time, making a deliberate choice in the acting room, if I put that in my own personal life, because I tend to not do that. I tend to avoid it, or I
Yeah.
tend to kind of hem and haw around it, especially if it's involves someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Then I may not, I'll just kind of retreat. I tend to be a very, as extroverted as I can be. My natural inclination is to close that door and just kind of be behind my own little curtain,
Mm-hmm.
and just let myself ruminate in this. So it's tough to get out of that.
Well, you've spent so much time behind curtains.
Right?
You really
Yeah.
have. I mean,
Yeah.
you've had such a successful career as a performer. You really have, just working in so many different markets. And I think that it's incredible that you've been able to fuse your past experience with broadcasting into the realm where you are now, because
Hmm.
your podcast is so amazing. It really
Thank
is.
you.
It's
Thank
so
you.
amazing. It's so inspirational. And could you tell us a little bit more about your podcast and what, I know we're skipping ahead a little bit, but like what made you decide you wanted to do a podcast 3 years ago?
Yeah, so it actually came about. So, around 2015, I think, when Serial and This American Life was really gaining steam, and everyone was kind of talking about this new. I didn't really know. I think I'd heard the word podcast, but didn't really know what it was until
Mhm.
then, that I started to understand. Oh, it's these little like audio things that you can listen to, like Audible or something.
Mhm.
So I first heard of it then. Then I got into, probably, so that's probably like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that there was a podcast called My Dad Wrote a Porno,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
which is
yeah,
hysterical.
yeah.
And as the name implies, this son's father had written a porn book, and so chapter by chapter, episode by episode, he reads it. It's hysterical.
Mhm.
So that made me think, oh, this medium could be something more than just like a news story, which is kind of what This American Life felt like. So it got me thinking, oh, this could really be something where I just talk and banter with people and laugh. And a friend of mine and I had just done a reading. We had good banter. He was different from me in some ways, but also we connected well. So I approached him about starting a podcast. We didn't really know what it was going to be, but I just knew we wanted to talk, have fun, and just kind of banter back and forth. And I thought people might want to listen to that. So we honed it in on performing arts, and we came up with this one segment where we talked about, okay, well, here's the reason why I'll never make it,
Mhm.
because I get nervous, or I get jealous, or and so we would come up with all these reasons why we're not going to make it, and that was one segment of it. And we had people listen to it, and they really liked that segment. So
Mhm.
we just said, okay, scrap all the other, let's just do a show about that. So we
Mhm.
came up with Why I'll Never Make It. And it originally began with me and my co-host talking about why we'll never make it, why we're still here, what keeps us
Mhm.
going, and then we get into an interview.
Mhm.
Once he left for greener pastures, he had his own thing he wanted to do. I became the solo host, and I wasn't able to do that banter back and forth, but I
Mhm.
still want to incorporate that sense of setbacks and challenges, and how we overcome them, and what holds us back, and getting that kind of sense of what is making it mean to people.
Yeah.
And so that's what the podcast has now become, of just getting a sense of how are people facing challenges, how are they still finding success when they don't, when they're rejected, which is a lot of this business,
Yeah.
how do they keep going? So
Yeah.
that's, and so I get pushback a lot on the title, because guests will say, well, why do I want to be on a show that says why I'll never make it? I want to make it, I am making it,
Mhm.
and but I think once they listen to it, especially once they come on the show, they get a sense of, oh, now I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're trying to give a sense, because it goes back to an Andre DeShields. He gave that Tony Award winning speech that about the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next. It's all about, we never make it. We never really get to a point where, oh, well, done. Okay, I can sit back. I guess if you're Seinfeld and you did a show, then you never need to work again. But even he wants to do other things.
He still does comedy.
Yeah, he's still cranking it out. It's not like he's I mean, he could live off that. Same with all the Friends. I mean, any successful person doesn't just stop, generally. They continue to create, they continue to do something else. That peak, that wonderful mountain just propelled them to another mountain. And so that's why we'll never make it, because we're constantly in a sense of making it. And we'll also never make it because once we've made it, then we've stopped. Then we're not growing. We're not pushing ourselves. We're not, so there's, it's,
layers.
It's a very layered title now.
I love that. I love that. You were also in the First Wives Club when they were doing it over in Chicago. Tell me what that was about, because that was coming to Broadway, and then the pandemic happened.
Oh, it was coming. It was coming. So this was 2015. When that was happening. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the workshop, which was that fall before. And then in 2015 for 3 months, we rehearsed in New York, and then we went to Chicago for 2 months. And yeah, I mean, they were spending money right and left. It was like, this is coming to Broadway. They wanted to put their stamp on it. They were constantly rewriting. There was one girl, I felt for this song was a country song, then it was a pop song, then it was like a soul rock song, then it was and the lyrics were changing. So there were 7 different versions of that song, and she would rehearse in the day, do it a different one at night. It was that kind of craziness where they were our finale kept changing, this little bit. And me, not a dancer, so let's do that kick but add this to it, and then push this over here. And so I'm like trying to remember different dances. I'm going, what? Yeah. So it was a struggle in that sense, but at the same time, the book writing was good. We were using classic Motown songs as well as new songs by that writing team. And so it was actually becoming a great, really fun musical, kind of in the vein of a 9 to 5, of strong women leading the show. And we had Carmen Cusack before she was Carmen Cusack, so she was amazing. Faith Prince, of course, wonderful, just a wonderful human being, but also like a masterclass of just sit back, let's watch how Faith does this, And so it was, we had such a wonderful cast that got us through that. And I mean, like, even on the last week in Chicago, they spent $10,000 on one of our understudies' dresses, because she was an understudy for one of the 3 leads. So I mean, they were still like, okay, we're going. But then come to find out, once we got back to New York, our final paycheck came out of what's called the escrow. And basically that means that producers put up an escrow that if something goes wrong, that everyone can get paid. And if you ever get paid out of the escrow, it means something has happened. There's some financial. So we had to like go to the office, pick up our check, sign for, so it was like a thing. And once we knew that, I think that's when all the actors knew what maybe some of the creative team already knew behind the scenes, some of the producers, that the show just was not really going to go any further at that point. Now, later on, we find out that there had been some embezzling, that maybe some people got some money that they shouldn't have and took some money. And so there was that rumor about things happening. So obviously things had gone on behind the scenes that were just, because creatively it got mixed reviews in Chicago, fair enough, but the show itself was solid. And it was one of the few musicals where the book was so good and so funny.
Yeah, the movie was so funny. So they...
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, you take that movie and then you add Mary Bloodworth Thompson, which is from Designing Women. She wrote that show. So that kind of, that feisty female banter that just, of strong women was just throughout and so funny.
Mm.
So it really was a shame that it never blossomed into a Broadway show.
Ah, such a bummer.
Yeah.
But I feel good things coming from your way, and I feel something happening. And I mentioned before, like you've kept yourself pretty busy throughout the quarantine with the podcast as well as with some virtual readings.
Right.
Um, so in terms of like what you're looking forward to the most, like what do you miss the most about the world that used to be?
I mean, it really comes down to I mean, auditions are never a favorite thing, but I
Hmm.
gotta say, I miss them at this point.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, self-tapes are one thing, and there's some satisfaction that can be, oh, great, I did a good self-tape, I'm proud of that, and you send it in. But there's another energy in the room that you can't create in a self-tape, obviously. And
Hmm.
so I actually miss going to Midtown, going to going to that, the waiting area, being called in, walking in, smiles, sing, that that kind of process that we go through day in and day out. It was just stopped, cut off
Hmm.
completely. And so I actually missed that. And then of course seeing shows, because I my husband and I really aren't moviegoers. We go and see shows. Like, so
Hmm.
that's our form of entertainment. So
Hmm.
in both of those instances, I will be very much looking forward to New York getting back to normal in that respect.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, it will happen. It's just
Happen.
a matter
It's
of
just
how
gonna
and
be a
when.
minute. It's just gonna be a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
It's interesting. Like, if you'd asked me, even a couple of years ago, I would say, on Broadway, uh, in some musical, and really in the throes of that, because I've found, and even in the interviews that I've had, once you book a Broadway show, it's easier to book the next one. It's getting that
Hmm.
first one that's really that hurdle.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of continuing on and progressing in that. So that would be like, well, that's where I see myself. I'm a Broadway performer. That's what I do. I'm able to then parlay that into doing other concerts. It just kind of then blossoms into other opportunities. But now I still want to do Broadway, and I still know that I'm capable of it. But
Hmm.
I also know that for the most part, it's out of my hands.
Hmm.
And I have to come to peace with, well, what do I want to do? Like, okay, so Broadway is a place that I want to do it, but what is that I want to do on Broadway? And that is, I want to be invested in a character that touches an audience. I want to be in a story that is meaning something.
Hmm.
And and sometimes that meaning can be fluff. I've done fluff musicals that are a joy to do, and I've
Hmm.
done those that are deep and dark and have a lot of like I have to go through the paces, in it. So it can run the gamut of that. But I've stopped letting Broadway be the end all be all, and I
Hmm.
really want to be someone who is working, but is working in such a way that I'm meeting the creative and artistic side of myself that doesn't depend on the place. It just depends on the what. It depends
Hmm.
on that particular play or musical. And that's what I'm trying to do more of. And
Hmm.
before the pandemic, I was being more selective with the kind of shows, with the kind of roles that I would go out for, so that I'm not just saying yes to everything.
Hmm.
Now I'm a bit more like, yes, yes, yes. Just
Hmm.
just give me
Yeah.
something. But eventually, yeah, I'll be able to get back to being more selective. And there were even times that this big show would come along, but I'd be like, that's not really what I do. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to do that work, but I'd rather do this.
Hmm.
Like one, for example, one of my favorite shows is Peter and the Starcatcher, and there was going to
Hmm.
be this big production of it, and they wanted to bring me in for Lord Astor. Now, I have auditioned in many iterations, Broadway, off-Broadway, tour for Black Stash, because I know I am Black Stash.
Hmm.
Like when it comes to, again, I was talking about connecting to a character.
Hmm.
I love the character and connect to it. And my auditions always went so well and was called back each time. However, they were bringing me in for Lord Astor, and I was like, well, I would like to audition for Black Stash. Well, we're not really thinking of you for that, but how about Lord Astor? And I turned it down. I was like, all I know is if I do book it, I'm just going to be watching Black Stash, that whole rehearsal process, performance. I mean, why can't I do that? And then I'm not having any fun.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a better place where I think, you know what, Lord Astor would be a fun role to do. So there are different places where we find ourselves in our career where we can, sometimes it's not the right time, or emotionally I'm not ready for that. But I think I'm I have a bigger vision now, and I'm not so focused on Broadway that it excludes everything else. I'm able to take a wider view of what my career can be.
Well, I think it's just expansive. It's expansive. And I look forward.
I certainly hope so.
I look forward to the realms that you keep diving into. May more commercial, may more commercial work come your way. May
Absolutely.
more of singing opportunities as well as voiceover. You just have such a great voice. Such a great voice. And so I wish nothing
really
but
appreciate that. That's really nice of you to say.
May more abundance keep flowing your way, my friend.
Thank you, Ashley. It's such a joy to talk to you. You're a light of yourself.
Stop.
So
it's just my lights in my room.
Right. No, but you're a joy to talk to. So it's a pleasure to open up and kind of dig into these issues. I like it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I know my audience thanks you because, everyone has a different story. And I feel like even after I hear everyone's story, I learn something. I either learn something about the business, or I learn something about how different people handle different things, or I learn an interesting fact about something. There's always a takeaway. And I know that's why that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast, is because I get to learn about other people.
It's the same with my podcast. I mean, there are many ways to make it. And so that's that. Yes. And so that's it's always interesting to hear the different paths that people go on.
Yeah, I agree. All right, my friend, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been a pleasure.
Being here. I appreciate it. Cool.